All right, week 14 of the NFL season is all but in the books, aside from the Simpsons, Cowboys, and Bengals game tonight. But we got 10 games from this past Sunday to talk about. Yes, a wide majority of this video at the end is going to be on that Rams-Bills shootout. If you're here to see me just yap about that, timestamps are in the description. But if you actually respect the ball and want to hear about each and every game, let's talk about week 14 of the NFL season. All right, so off rip, we're going to talk the Vikings 42-21 victory over the Atlanta Falcons, and the prophecy that I laid out for you guys weeks ago has come true. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are in sole possession of first place in the NFC South. We'll talk about them in a minute, but this is the thing with the Falcons, man. And Kirk didn't have the worst day possible, but again, look at the stat sheet here. 344 yards is cool, but 0 touchdowns, 2 picks, a 70 passer rating. The guy, simply put, does not have it anymore. The Falcons offense is beyond predictable. When they're under center, they're going to run a stretch play to the right. Why? Kirk can't push off the Achilles to go to the left. It's going to be a stretch play to the right. When they are lined up in shotgun, it is going to be either a pass or inside zone to the left. Those are the only two options. The pistol is the only time when their offense has a bit of diversity, but it has just become so predictable. And you watch this game and you saw Brian Flores figure out the best defense throughout. The Falcons had a little bit going early on, but look at the end of this game, 28-11 in the second half. The adjustments are unable to be made for Atlanta because they can run one style offense, and that is it with Kirk Cousins. Now, I don't know if Michael Penix is ready to go. I don't even know if this is a fair spot to throw him in. While your team is still technically competing for a division, throwing him immediately in these high leverage games, I don't know if that's fair. Maybe you got to ride this season out with Kirk Cousins, the guy that you paid, north of $100 million to. I don't know. But I will say this, the Falcons are toast. The Falcons are absolutely 100% toast. Season's over. Even if they miraculously win the division because they do have the tiebreaker with Tampa, they're a one-and-done playoff exit. They're a one-and-done playoff exit. This would be the game. This would be the game. You'd have the 4-seed Falcons hosting the 5-seed Vikings. And it would look a lot similar to what it looked like today. The Falcons, season's cooked. The Vikings fans who have been on for the tier lists, I owe you an apology. I have been having you guys in the playoff team, not the Super Bowl contenders, and it was because of the close games to some subpar competition and just my overall doubt of Sam Darnold. And I get it, it's the Falcons. They don't really have like a legit pass rush. They're not the hardest defense to go up against, but the Vikings offense showed me in this game that they absolutely have enough explosivity and firepower to compete in the NFC. I'm not sold that they're not better than the Green Bay Packers straight up, and I think they could go toe-to-toe with Philly or Detroit on any given Sunday. I'm not saying I'd pick them to win, but if we played that game 10 times, they'd win some of them. That's for sure. Sam Darnold was absolutely excellent in this game. 22 of 28 passing, 347 yards, 5 touchdowns, no interceptions, a 157.9 passer rating, and Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson have a case for being the best wide receiver duo in football. Addison has really come into his own this year, and Justin Jefferson was already the best wide receiver in football. Aaron Jones had a solid day, Hawkinson's cool, but what this Minnesota offense was able to do time and time again, big play after big play. I mean, everybody saw the Justin Jefferson long touchdown. What the hell was that Falcon safety doing? Somebody said he had Jefferson on his fantasy team or had a Jefferson 2-time touchdown scorer. I'm conditioned to believe them. That safety looked to the right for some reason. Justin Jefferson cut to the left, and that safety looked to the right where nobody was. The ball wasn't in the air going to the right, and then cut back to the left and slipped and fell, and Justin Jefferson walked in for a touchdown. That has got to be one of the worst plays I've ever seen a safety attempt to make in the NFL. But Justin Jefferson, I guess, has that effect. 7 for 132 and 2. Jordan Addison, 8 for 133 and 3. I know he's out here winning fantasy weeks for people. The Minnesota Vikings are legit. Obviously, you guys have heard me clamor before about the Brian Flores defense. I think that they're an underrated defensive group still to this day. They have really good players on that side of the football as well. But with O'Connell and Darnold playing at this level, Darnold's playing himself into a massive contract this offseason. Because I started to look at the quarterback landscape of what teams need a quarterback, and the draft class, it's starting to feel kind of very Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward, and that's it. Personally, the next quarterback I would even consider taking is Drew Aller, just because of the intangibles. It's kind of like a JJ McCarthy situation where he's not exactly showing me he's amazing in college, but with his age and what he could do, but that's a whole other video. But when it comes to this, like Sam Darnold, the Titans, the Jets, teams like of that nature that aren't the Raiders and Giants with the number 1 and number 2 pick, why would you not pay him? Hell, if you're Minnesota and you go on to win like 13 games this year, do you not at least entertain franchise tagging this guy? I know it'd be a $41 million payday, but do you not even entertain it? I'm going to let Vikings fans answer that one in the comment section, but the Vikings will be moving up in this week's tiers. All right, we're not going to spend too much time on the Jaguars-Titans game because I don't know if anybody really cares at this point, even if you're fans of the Jaguars and Titans. I do want to make this point, though. The Jaguars winning this game may have just cost them Travis Hunter. Travis Hunter might be a New England Patriot because the Jaguars won this game. Mac Jones and Will Levis both played terrible. Tony Pollard played pretty good. Brian Thomas showed some flashes, but ultimately in a 10-6 football game, you just kind of saw the ineptness that these offenses had all season that led them to be in this spot right now where they are 3-10. Both teams have down weeks. The Jacksonville Jaguars are the team that gets lucky enough to win the game. But honestly, if I'm a Jags fan, I'm kind of pissed off because it's like, did we just cost ourselves a generational two-way player in Travis Hunter? Like, if Travis Hunter comes into the NFL and is successful as a wide receiver and cornerback, and my team didn't get him because in week 14, we got to 3-10 by beating a 3-win Titans team, I'd be pretty pissed. The Miami Dolphins beat the New York Jets 32-26, and the New York Jets just keep finding ways to lose football games at this point in time. It's actually just kind of quite comical. They're outscored 17-3 in the fourth quarter and overtime. The Miami Dolphins have a come-from-behind victory over the New York Jets, and listen, neither of these teams are playoff destined. The Dolphins, even though they're 6-7, will not be a playoff team. They have enough tougher games on the rest of their schedule that I just don't see it happening this year. The offense is decent, and Tyreek Hill really finally has a big boom week, 10 for 115 and a touchdown. Jalen Waddle was 9 for 99. And I think the offense has a fine future going forward. They do need to add some pieces to that secondary. Aaron Rodgers, who's just been washed this year, was able to dice them up for about 3/4 of this game. Garrett Wilson and Devontae Adams, yes, are great weapons, but a lot of teams in the NFL have great weapons. If I'm a Dolphins fan, I feel good about what I'm seeing. I love that this team has fight, but I just don't see it happening this year. The rushing attack, too. Devon Achane is explosive. Okay, Devon Achane is a good runner. 1.7 yards per carry screams to me an offensive line issue. So the Dolphins have some things to work on, but I like the direction that they're headed if I'm a Dolphins fan. I feel like if Tua didn't get hurt, we're probably a playoff team. For the Jets, they keep finding new ways to lose. They keep finding ways to blow games. They did it last week to Seattle. They should have gone up 28-7 at halftime. Instead, they threw a pick six. They should have won this game. Realistically, you're up big going into the fourth quarter of this game, and then you get outscored 17-3 in the fourth quarter and overtime. It is a catastrophic loss. It is a bad loss. The Jets now, I believe, have the 7th pick in the NFL draft. Probably going to take one of the 2 tackles, whether the Texas one or the LSU one. Does Rodgers come back for next year? It's kind of up to him because the money, he's on for it. Who's the head coach you bring in? I've started to think maybe Rex Ryan, Mike Vrabel. Like, it's got to be a culture guy. It's got to be a guy that isn't going to take Rodgers BS. But if he returns, are you even confident you could win with Rodgers? Because my take on the Jets is this is exactly what a team looks like that doesn't have a good head coach, doesn't have a good quarterback, but has a good roster. Look at the roster. Braylon Allen and Isaiah Davis as backup running backs were more than serviceable today. Garrett Wilson, Devontae Adams, two great receivers. Malachi Corley, who doesn't get enough playtime in my opinion, is a fine rookie who could develop. You have good players on the defense. The Williams brothers, Sauce Gardner, DJ Reed. Like, the roster is there. I know the roster is there. But Rodgers is subpar. And they don't have a good head coach. And I'm not saying Saleh was great, but you've gotten worse since you fired him. This is exactly what an NFL team that's lacking a quarterback and a head coach, but has a good roster, looks like. The New Orleans Saints pick up a 14-11 victory over the New York Giants in an absolute snooze fest. Derek Carr looks like his season might be over. There's no real story here for the Saints. I mean, I guess the cool part is you bring in your special teams coordinator to be your head coach. You win a game on the road in MetLife based on a special teams play where Brian Bracey jumps over the line. I mean, what a display of athleticism for him. Jumps over that line and blocks that field goal. Great for him. For the New York Giants, 2-11, 0-7 at home this year. And listen, a loss is a good thing. You want Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward. The Giants are one of the more desperate teams for a quarterback in the NFL. And, if they didn't get Shedeur or Cam Ward and they pivoted to Sam Darnold, I don't know how well that works out. Darnold is obviously better than what he was on the Jets. But right now he's in a situation in Minnesota where he's playing alongside Jefferson, Addison, Hawkinson, Aaron Jones, and has Kevin O'Connell at head coach. I think it's fair to say wherever he goes next, there's likely going to be some regression in terms of play, not because of just Darnold individually, but because of the surrounding, the situation doesn't get much better than that. And it's certainly not better than that in New York. New York has some positives. I like Tyrone Tracy. I think he's a good, 3-down tool back. Malik Neighbors, nobody doubts that this guy's good. Wan'Dale Robinson, Jalen Hyatt, these are good 2 and 3 options. The defensive line, when healthy, Lawrence, Burns, Thibodeau, Ojulari, Okereke up there as well. You got to work on the secondary, obviously, but Nubin's been a good safety pickup. The Giants losing this game is a blessing. You have to be in the Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward business. You cannot fall out of that. Because I just don't believe Sam Darnold saves the Giants. And maybe that's just me not giving Darnold enough credit, but I don't even know if they fit Darnold's timeline or if he even wants to go back and play at MetLife. Imagine Darnold told them no. Where would they be? Purgatory. At least you're not paying the purgatory quarterback $40 million, but losing this game is a good thing for the New York Giants. The Philadelphia Eagles defeat the Carolina Panthers 22-16. The Eagles are winners of 9 straight games. It took a little bit of a second half effort, but the Eagles get the job done at home. I want to start with the Eagles and then we'll talk about the Carolina Panthers. Everybody was on Jalen Hurts and was on the Eagles post this game. And a couple of things with this don't sit right with me. One, the Panthers have been a better team since Bryce Young has returned. I don't think anybody could doubt that. They took the Buccaneers, who are now the NFC South leaders, to overtime last week, and Patrick Mahomes had to scramble to set up the Chiefs for a game-winning field goal to defeat this team. The Eagles won this game in the fourth quarter, making a stop. The Panthers have been a more than competitive team since Bryce Young has come back off the bench. Now, Jalen Hurts, 108 passing yards. I know that number glares out to people. And the passing game was not excellent today by any measure. It wasn't even good. I'm not going to sit here and lie and pretend to do that. But I think after not losing a football game for 2 months straight and winning on a week where you probably had a C-, D+ level performance, the Eagles have earned a little bit of grace. They're 11-2. They're more than favorites to win the NFC East. They're competing with Detroit for a 1 seed. Like, taking your foot off the gas when a 3-9 team comes to town and still getting the win in week 14, I think that deserves a little bit of a grace period. I understand that people and Eagles fans are a little worrisome after how last year ended with their foot not on the brakes, but you look at the roster, you look at the play, this isn't last year's Eagles. They'll be fine off of a bad game, and not for nothing. Jalen Hurts, a 67% completion percentage, 3 total touchdowns, no turnovers, a 110 passer rating. Like, you could do worse. I get it, the yardage isn't there, but this is a run-first team. Saquon Barkley, 20 for 124 again. Like, that is the Eagles' identity. Defense and running the ball. There's going to be weeks where Jalen Hurts doesn't throw for 200 yards. He doesn't have to. And the team still wins games. That's the truth of the matter. For the Panthers, man, Bryce Young, he's looked impressive and impressive. And anybody that watched this game, you can't tell me Bryce Young wasn't dealing. You can't tell me Bryce Young wasn't making plays. And Bryce Young is making plays with Adam Thielen, 9 for 102 as his best receiver. Xavier Legette dropped what would have been a go-ahead touchdown with about, around like 1 minute and change left. The Eagles had 3 timeouts, could have gotten in field goal range for Jake Elliott, and who knows how the game ends, but Bryce Young dealt in this game. Bryce Young is like, there's a reason when a couple years ago Bryce Young was drafted, I had him definitively over Stroud and Anthony Richardson. And obviously, if you can go back in time, you take CJ Stroud number 1. I'm not sure that Bryce Young wouldn't go ahead of Anthony Richardson. If after 2-year sample size of what we know about both of these guys, I'm not sure. I think that would just come down to a GM preference. Bryce Young's looked really good, and we're finally starting to see that playmaking ability that he had at Alabama. And I said this when the Panthers hired Dave Canales. This is a guy who has had a history of turning around quarterbacks. He did it with Geno in Seattle. He did it with Baker in Tampa Bay. It's starting to look like he's doing it with Bryce Young in Carolina. And when he did it with Geno, he had DK Metcalf, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Ken Walker, Tyler Lockett. When he did it with Mike Evans, he had with Baker Mayfield. He had Mike Evans. He had Chris Godwin. He had Rashad White. He had K. Dotton. In Carolina, he has Chuba Hubbard, who's been excellent. But Adam Thielen, Legette, David Moore, the Panthers go out and get another weapon this offseason. And, I think that, not that they're necessarily going to be players in the division, but they're a tougher out. They feel like a 6-7 win team next year. And maybe the year after they're competing in that division. The roster certainly needs some work, but what we've seen from Bryce Young over the last month, I don't know how, if you're a Panthers fan, you don't start to believe, like, hold on, maybe we do have something here. The Pittsburgh Steelers defeat the Cleveland Browns 27-14. Listen, the Browns, here's the Browns. They're one of the best 3-10 teams ever. When you play them down the stretch, like, you're going to have to compete. That is the story of the Cleveland Browns. For Pittsburgh, no George Pickens, Russell Wilson, 101 passer rating, 2 touchdowns, wins the game. The guy is better than he was advertised in Denver. The guy, Russell Wilson, is going to be the Steelers' starting quarterback next year. The Pittsburgh Steelers are one of the more consistent teams in the NFL. Week to week, you know what you're going to get. A defense that shows up and bowls out. A defensive player in TJ Watt, who's the best defensive player on the planet. And an offense that can run the ball and is good for 2 to 5 explosive plays a week. That's it. The Steelers formula works. Great coaching, great defense, serviceable offense with a veteran quarterback who's smart with the football and airs it out to really good 50-50 ball wide receivers. I've been saying it for weeks now. This formula for Pittsburgh is good enough to contend to win a Super Bowl. I'm not saying that they do it. but it's good enough to compete in an AFC where Kansas City, every single one of their games comes down to the last possession, and Pittsburgh's got the best kicker in the league, it seems like. I don't know if Boswell misses. A Bills team who, we'll talk about them in a little bit, but are certainly susceptible to being shredded by good quarterback play. We watched Lamar do it, and now we watch Stafford do it. You know, you have to have the weapons. You have Pittsburgh themselves. You have Houston, who doesn't have an O-line. Baltimore, who Pittsburgh owns. And Denver and the Chargers, who I don't know if they have the offensive firepower to keep up, especially against that Pittsburgh defense. The AFC is open, and Pittsburgh could certainly win it. Huge game coming up with the Eagles. I'm excited to see how the Steelers offense looks against the Eagles defense. It'll be a real test to see, will they be able to succeed in the postseason? But for a team in Pittsburgh who was given a gauntlet of a schedule, everybody talked about it at the beginning of the year. This is the year Tomlin finally goes under 500 because look at how ridiculous the schedule is. There are 13 games, the guy's 10-3. The Buccaneers take over first place in the NFC South and are now 7-6 after a 28-13 victory over the Las Vegas Raiders. Again, quick note on the Raiders. Here it is. Losing's a good thing. Shador, Cam Ward. That's who you want going forward. You want one of those guys heading up your franchise. Sincere McCormick, kind of a baller. Michael Mayer and Brock Bowers, talk about a tight end duo going into the future. You feel pretty good about some of the pieces you've built up there if you're Vegas. For Tampa, the running back room that they have of Rachaad White, Bucky Irving, and apparently Sean Tucker, that is a good RB room. Combine that with Baker and his gunslinger mentality and Mike Evans, and if they had had Chris Godwin, man, this was a real threat of a team. With Godwin, that offense was dynamic enough to beat anybody. One of Detroit's only loss. Who's it to? A healthy Tampa Bay Buccaneers team. The Buccaneers got bit by the injury bug. It sucks. It derailed their season. Not to the point where they're not going to be a playoff team. They're going to be a playoff team, and they're not going to be an easy one to beat. But the ceiling of them going on a run, I just don't think is there offensively. If Jalen McMillan takes a leap in this last month here, and Bucky Irving can get back, and him and Rachaad White are that tandem, because Bucky Irving dealing with a back injury now, Tampa Bay is good enough to upset anybody. Now, the defense is shaky. The secondary is shaky. But this is exactly what I told you about Tampa and why they would be better than Atlanta comes the season ends. Baker is a mile ahead of Kirk Cousins. A mile. The coaching staff in Tampa feels like it's better than the coaching staff in Atlanta. Weapons-wise, closer than you think. You know, Tampa's an underrated team. And Tampa's a team to watch next year. Especially if they retain Godwin, man. Because if McMillan takes a leap, Baker. Bake show. The Seattle Seahawks defeat the Arizona Cardinals 30-18. Seattle takes a grip of that NFC West division. They are 8-5. They beat the Cardinals 30-18. It feels like the Cardinals are out of the running. And to be honest, the Cardinals, if they finish 7-8 wins, I'd say it was a successful year. Because going into the year, you questioned if that defense had enough lick of talent on it. They showed you there is some talent to be had there. Kyler Murray showed you, yeah, he's got his ups and downs, but the Cardinals have a lot of money to spend this offseason. I believe they're top 7 in cap space. The Cardinals getting to 500, getting a healthy season out of Kyler Murray, getting more of this offense connected, another year of development of Marvin Harrison Jr., get Jonathan Gannon, some more players on that defense to develop, and all of a sudden, the Cardinals could win this division next year. I certainly don't count them out for next year, but losing both games to Seattle, 6-7 to Seattle's 8-5, where Seattle has the tiebreaker, it feels like it's pretty over for Arizona. For Seattle, man, snake in the grass. They are the snake in the grass in the NFC, and I completely am taking that from bootleg and bootleg, but that's the perfect way to describe them. Mike Mack, man, if this guy's a freak, this guy's a great defensive coach. he's got those defensive guys playing. And 5-1 on the road. Geno Smith pointed this out. That is coaching. That is team mentality. You know, you'd love to have a better record than 3-4 at home, obviously, but being able to go on the road in the NFL and win games consistently, like Seattle has, that means you got a good coaching staff. That means you got a good mentality as a team. That means you're tough. Seattle's tough. Charbonnet, got to get this guy more touches, man. Where's this guy been all season if this is what he could do? I mean, I know Arizona's not the best defense, but my God. Ken Walker, when he comes back, him and Charbonnet, what a duo. Smith and Jigba, DK Metcalf. I mean, Smith and Jigba might be the one here. You know, Smith and Jigba was the test of who really knows ball. Because there were a couple of years there where people were out on him, in on him. And Geno, man, he's been hot over the last month. The defense is legit. Seattle's legit. You know, you're going to send, I think Green Bay and Seattle play on Sunday Night Football this upcoming week. But it's looking like that'll also be the playoff game. Green Bay traveling to Seattle, I would imagine. Minnesota traveling to Tampa, if things just kind of stand where they are. I wouldn't be so sure. I wouldn't be so sure that Green Bay wins that game. You got a quarterback in Jordan Love who can turn the ball over, and a Seattle Seahawks defense who's stingy. I will be seated for Sunday Night Football this upcoming week. We're going to talk about the Rams in a little bit, but one of those two teams is getting in, and it could be both, man. Washington is not a lock. So we got a fun last month of the NFL season here in the NFC playoff picture to see who's going to be 5, 6, 7 and who's going to be that first team out. And not that it wasn't already over, but the San Francisco 49ers pretty much definitively closed the door on any season for the Chicago Bears. 0-6 on the road. I just talked about this with Seattle. 5-1 on the road. Well coached. Great mentality. Great team fortitude. Chicago Bears 0-6 on the road. Yeah. Not great mentally, not great fortitude. They have to bring in a culture-changing head coach. Vrabel, I've seen thrown out there. Belichick, maybe. Like, they need a culture guy in Chicago. I know Ben Johnson's fun. You need a culture guy. You need a culture guy in Chicago. Caleb makes good plays from time to time. He still hasn't thrown a pick in like 7 weeks, and the Bears just can't win games. But they need a change in culture. For San Francisco, 6-7. I doubt they make a comeback at this point, but I guess they're still alive because this Niners team that we saw yesterday, like that's the Niners team that a lot of people thought was going into the season. They asked Shanahan about, because there was rumors that Shanahan could be traded to the Bears. And I don't know if it was rumors. I think it was more just Colin Cowherd threw the idea out on his show, like that the Bears should do it. Shanahan shut that shit down. He's like, that's not happening. Purdy plays a good game. Garendo looks good in McCaffrey's absence, but then of course he gets hurt. The Niners were just badly bit by the injury bug. They'll be back next year. They'll be back competing for this NFC West, but the NFC West is going to have caught up, man. Seattle, they're not playing around. Arizona will be better next year. So, you know, good win overall for San Francisco, but you really hate to lose out on a year in which your team is clearly Super Bowl talent roster-wise. And to close out the show, the game of games that we saw yesterday, holy smokes, 44-42, the Rams get the victory over the Bills. This game had everything. Josh Allen was the first player ever, 3 passing touchdowns, 3 rushing touchdowns, same game. He also lost that game. Matt Stafford absolutely slinging it throughout this game. Puka Nacua, 12 for 162 and a touchdown. Like, Puka was eating. Puka looked like a top 5 wide receiver in the sport yesterday. We had a punt block return for a touchdown. This game had it all. No punts, no sacks. The game was outstanding. The game was outstanding. If you're a football fan and you didn't like this game, you're not a football fan. If you're a Bills fan, I get it. But just if you didn't have a dog in this race and you were watching this game and didn't love every second of it, get your head checked. Because this was why we love the NFL. This game was awesome. Josh Allen, in a loss, somehow improved his MVP ranking. I don't think I've seen that before for a quarterback. where in a loss, he somehow ups his case for MVP. The Bills almost made that comeback, by the way. The Bills almost did that thing, 21-6 in the fourth quarter. That would have been insane. I think if the Bills completed that comeback, Josh Allen would have won the MVP. I think it would have been set match over. I think now the race between him and Saquon is still legit. And my quick thoughts on that are, if Saquon breaks the rushing record, he should win the MVP. He is having the greatest season ever for a running back. Josh Allen is not having the greatest season ever for a quarterback. That should be that. If he's under 2,000 yards, Josh Allen should easily win it. A running back that doesn't run for over 2K is not the MVP. If he's somewhere in the middle, we could have a conversation. Now, when it comes to this game, this is what I talked about with the Rams in the tier list. Their peak play is better than any team in the NFC West at this point with what the roster is. Obviously, when San Francisco's healthy, there's a conversation. But with where the rosters are at this point in time, the Rams' peak play is better than any teams in the NFC West. And you talk about a team you don't want to see in the playoffs, man, if the Rams win this division and Minnesota wins 13 games, and your prize is going to LA to play Matt Stafford and this offense cooking, like what a joke that's got to be. I mean, that game was competitive. The Thursday Night Football game, we saw it this past, the earlier this season. Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua, Kyron Williams, like the Rams got weapons, man. The defense isn't good, but the defensive line is. Jared Verse, Braden Fisk, those FSU picks panning out. I don't know why this team let Ernest Jones go. He had a pick for Seattle today. Like, Ernest Jones is a guy that the Rams could use in their linebacker room right now. No doubt in my mind about it. The Rams, again, their peak offensive play is top 5 in the NFL. Can they do it consistently? No, not over a course of a season. They're 7-6. Can they get hot to end the year like they did last year and go into the playoffs and be like, we won the NFC West, we're the 4 seed, we have Stafford, McVay, Kupp, Nacua, Kyron Williams, and a defensive line that gets pressure. Let's see what the fuck happens. I mean, Buffalo coming into this week by many, was considered the best team in the NFL, and the Rams just knocked them off. And, the Rams were at home. The Rams don't have home games. That was a Bills crowd. So, I don't discount the Rams. And I said it last year going into the playoffs, and I'll say it again. If the Rams get into the dance, they could win the whole fucking thing. Because they have a top 5 thrower of the football in the NFL in Matt Stafford. With his lack of mobility and just, playmaking at this point, I don't know if he's a top 5 quarterback. But when it comes to throwing the ball from wherever he is in that pocket, whatever kind of throw it's needed to get it to the receiver, to where only the receiver can get it, there isn't 5 guys better than Matt Stafford at this point. There just isn't. A running attack with Kyron Williams and Blake Corum was coming along. Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua at wide receivers. And Demarcus Robinson, Tutu Atwell, some of those guys mixed in there. An offensive line that's been better. And a defensive line that can get pressure. I'm not counting out the Rams, man. I'm not. For Buffalo, listen, winning a lot of, it's hard to win in the NFL. It just is. Going into Matt Stafford and playing him while next week you have to play the Lions offense, it's hard. I don't really look at Buffalo any differently. I still think that they are the best team in the AFC that could beat the Chiefs. They're right there with them. It sucks to lose this game. It happens. The defense got shredded by one of the best of all time. You look at Josh Allen today, and I don't know how you could look at him and be like, this is on Allen. Obviously, it's not on Josh Allen. He played excellent. The rushing attack could have certainly been better. They didn't really get James Cook going in this game. You get down double-digit scores early, and you're able to pass the ball with the success that they did. They kind of just relied on that. I get it. Shakir, Amari Cooper, obviously those are big pieces. You bring back Keon Coleman and Dalton Kincaid, and the Bills might have the best weapons of any team in the AFC playoffs. That'll be healthy, with Houston losing Diggs and Kansas City losing Rashee Rice. The Bengals probably not making it to the playoffs. Like, Buffalo might have the best weapons in the AFC playoffs. They might. The defense, it had a bad day. McDermott will get them right. I'm not worried about Buffalo. To me, this spoke more volumes about, like I said, at peak play, the Rams can go toe-to-toe with anybody in the NFL. And I'll say it. They can compete for a Super Bowl. They can. That is my standpoint on that. And the tier list tomorrow should be interesting. I'll see the reaction to it. I can't wait. I appreciate your guys' support. As always, if you love the NFL and you're not subscribed to the channel, hit that button. You made it this far in the video. Hit the thumbs up button. It's good for me. Comments are great for the algorithm. Whatever game you want to talk about, let me know in the comment section. I will catch you guys next time. Peace.